Good afternoon, everyone. So, for today's discussion, we are going to talk about the measurement, assessment, and evaluation in outcomes based education. So, I am Secuya Cherilyn L., and I am from Group 2. With a change of focus in instructional from content to learning outcomes, came to need to redefine and clarify the terms used to determine the progress of students towards attainment. These are the measurement, evaluation, and assessment. So, measurement. It is the process of determining or describing the attributes or characteristics of physical objects, generally in terms of quantity. When we say measurement, we use standard measuring devices to an object, maybe a ruler, thermometer, scale, or pressure gauge, to find out how long, hot, heavy, and voluminous such things. Sometimes we can measure physical quantities by combining directly measurable quantities to form derived quantities. So dili ra kay sa math nato makita ang measurements, apil pod sa education. Not literally nga gamitan nimo siya og scale. Gamitan nimo og scale ang bata para mahibaw-an nimo ang iyahang sukod. But mo siyang ipamaagi og test para mahibaw-an nimo ang iyahang nasabtan sa imong discussion. So this kind of method is called testing. So testing is the same concept that can be measured in another way. For instance, having an oral recitation, quizzes, and even reflection paper that will measure the student's understanding towards the topic being discussed by the teacher. It is technically a matter of perception. There are two types of measurement. The first one is the objective measurement or testing, are more stable than subjective measurements in the sense that repeated measurements of the same quantity or quality of interest will produce more or less the same outcome. It is a measurement that does not depend on the person or individual taking the measurements. It is something that is measured consistently. So in education, an objective test consists of factual questions requiring extremely short answers which may consist of a word, phrase, or sentence. So examples are true or false, matching type, multiple choice, and identification. So the second type of measurement is the subjective measurement. It refers to the measures that have to do with people's opinion and experiences. They are more challenging and expensive to prepare, administer, and evaluate correctly, though they can be more valid. So, subjective measurement is more on personal comprehension and perception on a certain task given.
Assessment. The term assessment is derived from the Latin assidere, which means to sit beside. This is the process of gathering evidence of students' performance over a period of time to determine learning and mastery of skills. It could be in the form of dialogue record, journals, written works, portfolios, tests, and other learning tasks. Assessment requires review of journal entries, written works, presentation, research papers, essays, story written, test results, and etc. So, the overall goal of assessment is to improve student learning and provide students, parents, and teachers with reliable information regarding student progress and extent of attainment of the expected learning outcomes. Assessment is the basis to know the levels of achievements and standards required for the curricular goals appropriate for the grade or year level. Assessment results show the more permanent learning and clearer picture of the student's ability. Assessment of skill attainment is relatively easier than assessment of understanding and other mental ability, mainly because assessment of understanding is much more complex, wherein we are going to assess a person's knowledge in a number of ways, but we need to infer from certain indicators of understanding through written descriptions. Unlike the assessment of skill attainment, because skills can be practiced and are readily demonstrable, either a skill exists at a certain level or it doesn't. Assessment of learning outcomes will be treated in a separate chapter.
Hello, good afternoon. So the assigned topic to me is evaluation. So what is evaluation? So evaluation originates from the root word value because evaluation is an action of appraising or valuing of something. Evaluation is a process designed to provide information that will help us to make a judgment about a particular situation. Through evaluation, it can help us to gain knowledge if that given specific activity improves or not. So, the end result of evaluation is to adopt, reject, or revise what has been evaluated. It involves data collection and analysis, quantitative and qualitative methods. So, the difference between qualitative and quantitative method is that quantitative is expressed as numbers like units, prices, proportions, rates, or ratios, while qualitative method is expressed as words. So next is objects in evaluation, which are instructional programs, school projects, teachers, students, educational tools. So with the help of these objects, the evaluator can critically examine, collect, and analyze information. So, what is the purpose of evaluation? So, the purpose of evaluation is to help educators determine the success of their academic programs and signal efforts to improve achievement. Next is to help identify the success factors of programs and projects. So, there are two categories of evaluation. First is formative evaluation, the second is summative evaluation. So, formative evaluation is a method of judging the worth of a program while the program activities are in progress, which means it focuses on the process of how well the program goes, if it is effective, does it need some improvements or not, or something like that, which give us the idea of what is the main goal of formative evaluation, which is to determine deficiencies so that appropriate interventions can be done. So next is the second category, which is the summative evaluation. It is a method of judging the worth of a program at the end of the program activities. So why at the end of a program or activity? It is because summative evaluation is intended to provide a package of results used to assess whether a program works out or not. It is more focused on the outcomes of the activities or programs. So, in conducting summative evaluation, it uses questionnaire, survey forms, interviews, or guide and test. So, this type of evaluation is designed to determine the effectiveness of a program or activity based on its avowed purposes.
Assessment for, of, and as learning. And here are the three types of assessment. First is the assessment for learning. Assessment for learning implies that assessment is done to improve and ensure learning. The four stands for formative assessment. Assessment ensure that learning is going on while teacher is in the process of teaching. Teachers give assessments to check the knowledge of the students if he or she gained knowledge from the teacher's lesson. This will ensure that students understood the lesson at the end. If the students lack of understanding of the lesson at ABC's lesson, then the teachers proceed to the lesson XYZ. Then at the end, students did not learn what was expected to them. Therefore, the teachers wasted time teaching, but students did not gain understanding at the lesson given. There are two types of formative assessment, which is the pre-test and post-test. Pre-test, students are determined their entry knowledge so that teachers know how to adjust instruction. Post-test, where the intended learning outcome has been attained after the teaching learning process. So, ang pre-test kay mao ni siya ang kinaunhan nga assessment nga gihatag sa inyong teacher before sa teaching and learning process. While ang post-test kay mao na siya ang assessment nga gihatag in the end or after sa teaching and learning process. The next assessment is the assessment of learning. Assessment of learning is usually given at end of semester. It is meant to assess learning for grading purposes, thus the term assessment of learning. For explanation, assessment of learning refers to strategies designed to confirm what students know. It demonstrates whether or not they have met curriculum outcomes or the goals of their individualized program. And the next assessment is assessment as learning. Assessment as learning associated with self-assessment. It is assessment as learning students will actively monitor and evaluate of their own learning. So, they become self-directed, independent learners, and by assessing their own learning, they are learning at the same time. Assessment as learning occurs when students reflect on and monitor their progress to inform their future learning goals. And some examples of assessment as learning include evaluative assessment, self-assessments, and peer assessments.